Perfect. All right. So if you can tell us your name and
My-
then spell it for us.
My name is Robert Thomas Bennie. That's Robert Thomas Bennie.
Perfect. And then we're just going to start off with some biographical questions
Mhm.
about you personally, and
Okay.
then we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper into the family history.
All right.
So,
Okay.
where and when were you born?
I was born in Ogden, Utah in January 24th, 1933.
And did you grow up there as well?
No, my father passed away at when I was 5 and a half. And my mother was originally from Butte, so she moved myself and my two daughters, or my two sisters, back to Butte. And we opened up a small hotel up in uptown Butte.
What was the hotel called?
It was called the Hillcrest Hotel. It was located on West Park Street, 117 West Park Street, as a matter of fact. And it was a small hotel, and she just rented the building from, or leased a building from this proprietor, and she just rented the rooms and got by that way.
Is that structure still standing?
No, it was during our fires of the 80s and 90s. It was joining next to Penny's, a department store, and when the Penny's fire went down, they took that hotel with it.
So where have you lived since Ogden?
Well, I was there until I went to college, and I was at the University of Montana for 2 years, and then I was in the service. I did 14 months over in Korea, and I came back and married my lovely wife here, and then we moved to Los Angeles to work for my uncle. I still hadn't graduated. I only had 2 years of college at that time, and we went to Los Angeles and stayed there for about 2.5 years. Our oldest daughter was born down there. And then we came back, and I went down to Missoula and finished at the university in accounting, and came back and went to work for the Montana Power here in Butte.
And what did you do for Montana?
Well, I was an accountant, and then when I retired, I was a treasurer of the company, and I had a little luck along the way.
Great.
34 years, so.
That's impressive. Well, that covers that question. Is that so? That's the job you've held for the longest.
Well, when I retired, I was treasurer of the Montana Power. And of course, Montana Power now is morphed into Northwestern Energy. Yeah.
What sorts of jobs did you do growing up?
Oh, boy, I worked in the mines. I worked at the 3300 for only 2 weeks. It was the most terrible job I ever had. And then I had a good friend that was a priest down in Anaconda. His name was Father Bud Sullivan. He got me a job at the smelter in Anaconda. And then I worked on the BANP. It was a railroad that went from Butte to Anaconda. These are all summer jobs, during school. And on a section down by Fairmont Hot Springs. And I just, in those days, you just had to go to work. My mother was a widow, and things weren't too good at as far as our economic situation. So we worked every job we could during the school. And then when I was at the university, in the summertime I worked at the Highlander Brewery in Missoula, and it was located down on just off of North Higgins there, and a good job, a hard-working job, but a very good job. And
did you just serve there, or did you brew?
No, I worked a night shift. What we would do, we would unload grain and that coming in on boxcars, and just do the general work that was, for a laborer, a common laborer. It was much better job than you could get in Missoula at the time for most jobs, because it was a union job, and it was paid, $2 or $3 an hour more than you could, say, working at a gas station or, some of the other jobs that you could get. Then when I was married and we were living down there, I got a job at Mountain Tractor. I was a janitor I washed windows and did some things. I think Mountain Tractor is still in Missoula, I'm not sure. They sold Caterpillar tractors and things.
Yeah, they may still be there.
Well, they could be there.
And when were you married?
Oh, I was married in 1955 here in Butte at St. Anne's. And then that afternoon we went on a honeymoon and we left Butte for Los Angeles. We had a little car and a little boat, and we had the boat loaded with our wedding presents and our clothes, and we're down in Los Angeles working for my uncle for 2 years down there before I came back to finish college.
And what did you do for your uncle?
He had a big insurance company, and I was an insurance adjuster. You'd go out and adjust small fire losses and wind losses and things like that.
And your wife is also of Irish ancestry?
Yes, she is. She is from. She was born in Idaho. Her father was in the service, and they were living with their grandmother down in St. Anthony, Idaho, when Lois was born. As a matter of fact, her grandmother brought her into the world. She was born on the 5th of February, and the snow was so bad they couldn't get the doctor to the house, and so God loved the grandmother. She delivered my wife in 1934.
That's incredible. What was your grandmother's? Or it was your grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mary Burnside.
her name was Burnside, and it was a General Burnside. I think he was a general that fought in the Civil War on the north side.
And that was his daughter?
Oh,
No.
I think it would be
great-granddaughter.
great granddaughter,
It would
something
have
like
been
that.
by the way.
Yeah.
We don't really know for sure.
It would have been the daughter-in-law, great-granddaughter-in-law, because she was a high. Actually, she had Swiss heritage, and this Burnside, she married a Burnside, so it would have been an in-law.
That's pretty impressive lineage.
Yeah,
That's great.
he's buried down in Du Bois, Idaho, and there's a bunch of Burnsides down in the cemetery.
Was his name George? Was that the general?
I don't know his first name. Do you know? I'm not
I'm
sure.
not positive either.
We'll call him George. How's
Sure.
that?
I'll do a little bit of research. That's interesting. That's great. And you have children.
We do. We have 5 children. Spread. We've got our oldest, Anne, and she's got three sons. She's got twins, as a matter of fact, and they're all grown. The oldest son is married and has a little one, and making us a great grandparents. And then the next one is Joan. She's not married, and she just lives around the corner here, about 5 houses down on the corner. And she works uptown in this. She's a land person for this oil company up there. And then Barbie works for the same oil company. She and her husband are childless, and they own a home further out about 5 miles south of town. And then the next one would be, let me see, Rob, and he lives in Spokane and has his own construction company, a small construction company, and doing well. And then the baby of the family is Tish, Patricia Bennie, and her name is Patricia Poland. She lives in Salt Lake, and she has her own company and doing quite well.
That's great. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your ancestors, what
Okay.
you know of them.
All right.
So when did they leave Ireland?
My grandmother, her name was Bridget Morris Rowe, and she was the 7th of 12 children, and she left around, I think it was like 1880 or 1885, something like that. They all came over in what they call steerage. That was the bottom of the ship. One would come over and earns enough money to send over enough for the next one, and they moved to either Anaconda or Butte. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you probably heard this before, but one of them was supposedly sent back notice with the money, and she said, when you get to the United States, don't stop in America at all. Just come out to Butte, Montana. So they all migrated out here. Some of them, two of them went to San Francisco and lived all of their life down there. But most of them, came here and either worked in the mines or in the smelter in Anaconda.
Where did they leave from?
They left from Cork. They all went out of Cork. I kind of know what Cork City, I guess, was on the coast there, and I think most of them left. That was the only passage that my grandmother ever talked about. Was
Do you know anything about what they did before they came across?
Yeah, well, the family, it was very poor. They lived in it's the little town is called Ballahadreen, and it's a tough spelling. I'll give you the spelling later. And they raised dairy cows, and God, they just had a small herd. At least when we went over to visit them, they only had like 30 cows or so, and they had a little peat moss area in the back of their house. They cut peat moss and they burned it in their home. It was a little rock home made out of stone. I mean, stone outside and stone inside. No insulation. God love them. And as far as my cousin is still living there. She's a widow now, and she raised a big family, but all of her kids are moved on. I have another cousin that lives in what they call Churchill, and that's in County Roscommon, just west of Mayo. And he has a little men's clothing store. Well, it's men and women's clothing store. It's not much. And he's still alive. And
have you been there to visit anyone?
yeah, we were there in '93, and then we were there again in about 2005 or 2006.
That's great.
And we were adventurous enough to rent a car and to drive in Ireland on the wrong side of the road with a car that had the steering wheel on the wrong side. But we made it, thank God.
Who was doing the driving?
I did it all. She had white knuckles on most of the time. As a matter of fact, we got to Clardy the first day. She was threatening to take a plane home. I had barely missed a herd of cows and some sheep or something, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's kind of a little hectic. You've been there? And
I've been there. I didn't drive.
You didn't drive, yeah. And these are some county roads, small roads. They weren't some of the larger.
And it's not like you can, bail out into a field. There's
No,
like a stone wall on it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's no side road there much. Boy, I'm telling you.
There's no shoulder.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
roundabouts.
Yeah,
are tricky.
and
too.
those
They're
roundabouts,
the
boy,
wrong way.
you got to get used to those. they are a little perilous.
But you made it. You survived.
I made it all right.
So it sounds like you've kept in touch really well with your Irish roots. And
We do as best we can. Like I say, we've only got our now. Everyone has died except my cousin in Ballahadreen and my cousin over in Churchill. And that's the only Morris Rose, and we've had just a terrifically bad time trying to trace my wife's Irish heritage. They are from the river. They're up on the River Slaney, and what was the name of that little village? Anyway, they came from Scotland, and they had a woolen mill up there, and no, that's mine, and they all worked at the woolen mill, and then they closed down the woolen mill, and they kind of scattered, and we were unable to kind of trace their heritage. And
she was Mulcahy.
well, not that side of the family. The married side of the family was Mulcahy.
My dad's side.
You're really confusing this. Yeah. But anyway, no, we have not been able to trace them at all.
Sure.
And we've tried, and we've endeavored to try to do that. We went down and visited with a little minister down at the church down there, and he was supposed to have all the records and send them to us, but we never heard from him.
So what does your Irish heritage mean to you?
Oh, you know, we just love it. As a matter of fact, we get older, we prize it more. You know, in my opinion, the Irish are just a hard-working, God-fearing bunch of, you know, and they're all very, very appealing. In my opinion, they're fun to be around. We're just so happy we live in Butte. You know, our kids, because we get older, they want us to move closer to them or something, and we just won't do it. We just love this town and what it means to us.
Are there any bits of story or tales that have come down from your family, from them in Ireland or their voyage, you know, across?
Well, you know, I wish I had talked to my grandmother and them more, but they used to get together and have a little dropping, and they used to talk about some of the fairs and that they would go to in Ballahadreen, and they would, one of them rode a donkey to the fair, and it was a female, and the donkey dumped her in a mud puddle, and she came in kind of a little ragged. But I wish I had talked, you know, got a little more out of him. In those days, you know, we didn't have ways to photocopy them and things like that. So it would just been what they told us. But I really wish I had done more.
I have a funny story. I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
Bob and I met in high school, and it was Christmas Eve.
Lois, you've already told the story.
Did I tell you that one where she said?
Oh, the one about
The goddamn.
Yeah,
okay,
you did.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was my funny story.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
That's a good one.
But anyway, she, like I say, my grandfather was blasted in a partial blast on a mine. You know how they, in Butte, how they have to drill into rock and then they pack it with powder, and sometimes it'll blast. And he got partially blinded in this powder blast down in the mine, and was out of work, and then she opened up her house to a little boarding house for some of the Irish miners that she knew, and then gradually she grew, and she owned one on Copper Street, which was about 3 stories, and they put up their buckets and they had meals there, and you know, she did quite well there. As a matter of fact, she went back to Ireland. She had to take the boat. It took her forever, and helped out what was left of her family. And we had a reunion here in Anaconda and Butte 2 years ago, the Morris Row reunion, and we had, oh God, there was 60 or 70 of us at the reunion. As a matter of fact, there was 2. One was a priest and one was a layman that came over from Ireland for the reunion, and I've got all the reunion documentation about it. We have a cousin down in California that's done so much research. He spent weeks over there in Ireland doing all this research in these old churches and things about this Morris Rowe family history of ours, and I think I've given you some history if you'd like to take a look at it. As a matter of fact, I've told you on the phone, and I know that this seems a little preposterous, but supposedly, according to him, he has traced all these Morris Rowes, and the Morrises, some of them cut their name down to Morris, and two of them were signers of the Declaration of Independence. One of them was from Pennsylvania, one of them from New York, and I'll give you that documentation when we're done. The other Morris that is, has some prominence is my first cousin is Brian Morris. He's on the Supreme Court here in Helena. He's one of the Supreme Court justices, and they have cut down their name, some of them from Morris Rowe to Morris, but nevertheless, it's the same family.
Wow. 2 declaration signers.
Well, that's what we've got there.
That's impressive.
And he's done a lot of research on it, and he says it's authentic. It's kind of hard to believe.
That's cool. That's great. And the boarding house. The woman with the boarding house is Bridget, the grandmother that we spoke of, right?
Her name was Morris Rowe, and
Right.
then her married name was McGrath.
Yeah, that's such an interesting phenomenon, how the culture divided in a way in Butte, because almost all the men were underground, and so it seems like, the women ran the town above ground.
Yeah, it was a tough struggle, and she worked from morning till night. Thankful to God, she had 4 daughters who did worked in the boarding houses with them, and in those days, there were so many single miners that they just needed a place to stay and they needed a place to eat, and then, like I say, they put up their buckets so that they'd take their lunch bucket going to work, and it was I was just a very small person when she sold the last boarding house up on Copper Street, but it was a going concern, and she did quite well there.
Yeah, it sounds like she was quite.
Oh, she was. She was a good Irish money manager.
5 feet tall.
She was she was a small one.
Mouth on her that wouldn't quit.
Oh, come on.
So we've talked a little bit about your family name. Do you know how that came into being?
I do. I can give you the whole history of it. Actually, I was really surprised when I found it. We were originally from Wales, and the Morris Rowes, and Rowe in Gaelic, it means black, and supposedly we have a cousin, he's deceased now, Father Bernard McCarthy. He did a lot of research, and he said that that there was a king, and he had two different commanders of his army, and they were both called Morris. And so to distinguish between them, he had Morris the Red and Morris the Black, and Morris Rowe is black. We were darker Irish, and so that's how we got the name Morris Rowe. And it's not a common name, as far as Ireland is concerned, but we migrated from Wales to Ireland, and I'm talking about 400 or 500 A.D. and so our family was in Ireland quite a while, but it originated in Wales according to this history that I've got.
Are there any traditional first names or nicknames in your family?
Well, let me see.
Bridget.
Well, maybe Bridget, yeah, I don't know. No, I don't think so. Like I say, she was from 11 children, and she was the 7th, and all of them migrated here. As a matter of fact, and a funny thing, my Aunt Nellie, she migrated over, didn't like it, went back.
Really? Yeah,
she was the only one that went back to Ireland and died back there. She was never married. No, you know, if there are any different nicknames or something, I'm not aware of them.
Sure. That's fine. Let's see. And do you speak any Gaelic or
I
languages
don't.
other than
You know, I wish I did. I have a friend of mine, Danny McGeehan, and his family is from up on the Upper West Side, and he knows a little Gaelic, but unfortunately, I don't know if they some swear words.
How do you know how your parents met?
Yeah, it's that's kind of interesting. My father was born in Park City, Utah, and he was a Utah native. He went to work for the Union Pacific Railroad, and in those days, they used to run a train every night up to Butte from Salt Lake, and he was in the Postal Service branch, and they would put him in a car, and all night long, he and another person would sort mail in the little cubby holes, and then when they get to Butte, it would all be sorted. You know, I mean, so much goes to the west side, and so much goes. So he'd land in Butte and then stay over in Butte, and then go back to Salt Lake. He met my mother at the Lincoln Hotel, which is still standing. Is it on the 200 block on West Park? He met my mother there, and we're married in. You know, I'm not quite sure exactly the day they were married, but anyway, that's how they met. And
Do you know how your grandparents met?
You know, I don't, but I have the citizenship. This is kind of a funny little story. I have the where they were here in both singly here in Butte, and they were naturalized Americans. And my grandfather, I just love it. He was asked if they renounced Queen Victoria, then Queen of the British Isles and the Irish and everything, and he said, "Indeed, I do." And I have his naturalization papers. I don't have my grandmother's, but she was naturalized too, U.S. citizens.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It'd be great to get a photograph of that, maybe.
I do have a photograph of that, yeah.
Or we can take one so we don't have to take your copy of it.
Sure, okay. You can just photograph something here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
Sure.
fine, yeah.
So what are some of your memories from childhood? What was?
Well, we lived in Salt Lake, like I say, till my dad died, and I was the only boy in the family, so I was quite spoiled. But we lived in Salt Lake until I was 5 and a half, and then moved to Butte, and my mother was able to lease a small hotel, and boy, I'm telling you, it was tough going. I remember in those days there was no dryers. We used to have to do all of the laundry and that and hang it out on a clothesline, and in the wintertime it would come in as stiff as a board. We'd be out there, and my two sisters, God love them, they're older than I, and they had to come home from high school every day instead of doing things like high school kids do and working in the hotel. And it was, and then when, fortunately and unfortunately, when the war was declared, they needed copper so bad that they were working 3 shifts here, and God, she had the hotel full then, and things were much better. It's unfortunate that it had to happen during the war, but nevertheless, and so she did much better, and then, you know, Butte has always had some terrific strikes, you know, the miners' union, and the worst strike was in 1959. We had just got back from Los Angeles. Lois and I were married, and the miners went out on strike the 1st of July in 1958. They didn't go back until February of '59, and it was a terrifically bad time in Butte. And she was trying to keep these miners in the hotel. They couldn't pay rent, and it was really a struggle. And so she owned this other hotel. She owned the bricks. She owned the actually the whole hotel and the storerooms underneath it, which was just over a half a block on West Park Street. She had bought it during earlier, and so we closed up the Hillcrest Hotel, and Lois and I and Lois's brother and another person moved the whole hotel from the Hillcrest Hotel to the Lincoln Hotel, and all the people in it, you know, and we had to move them up and down the stairs. It was we were a lot younger and a lot.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, we were able to do it then. But anyway, that's what we had to do to keep things going. It was really a sad time in Butte. Like I say, they were out of work for about 7 months, 6 months, and unfortunately, I think it was the last strike, because after that they closed down the deep mines, and they just have the open pit now.